Welcomes listeners. Mentions evening rain, kettle whistling, and St. Mary Mead at dusk. Where are you listening from tonight? Promises a quiet mystery behind ivy walls. Now, let's begin. St. Mary Mead. Quiet morning. Light slants through lace curtains. Miss Marple sits by the window. Needles click. Slow. Precise. Each stitch. Neat. Exact. Like her thoughts. The clock ticks softly on the mantel. The cat yawns, stretching against the hearth. Kettle hums in the kitchen, a small, steady sound. The air feels calm, predictable. She glances outside. Postboy on his bicycle. Cap tilted, brown bag slung across his shoulder. He whistles once, stops at her gate, slides an envelope through the slot, then rides off down the lane. Marple listens to the sound fade. Wheel creak. Whistle trail. Silence again. She sets down her knitting. Walks to the hall. Envelope waits on the mat. Heavy paper. Black wax seal. Unusual. Most people use plain glue these days. She bends to pick it up, turns it over. The handwriting neat, deliberate. Every loop closed, every letter spaced. Not friendly writing, careful writing. Return address. Mrs. Hester Vane, Ivy Cottage. Marple frowns. The name stirs something. A voice from years ago. Laughter at garden fetes. A woman who once wore blue ribbons and smiled too easily. Then one day gone. Widowed young. Sold her horses. Moved to Ivy Cottage. Stopped attending church. Stopped everything. Marple opens the envelope carefully. Inside one sheet. Cream paper. Expensive. Faint scent of lavender. The writing same as the address. Measured. Controlled. Dearest Jane, it has been too long. Would you visit me for tea tomorrow afternoon? There is a small household matter I wish to discuss. It troubles me more than it should. Yours, Hester Vane. Miss Marple reads it twice. No warmth in the phrasing. No personal note. Only one underlined word. Troubles. Strange choice. Too formal for a friend. Too polite for fear. She folds the letter again, looks out the window. The cat watches her, tail flicking. The kettle starts to hiss louder. Marple speaks softly. To be troubled, yet precise. That combination, my dear, means calculation. She places the envelope beside her knitting, returns to her chair. Hands still, eyes sharp. Hester Vane. A name gone quiet for years. Now calling again. The kettle whistles hard, then stops. Steam fades. In the stillness, the clock ticks once more. Even. Predictable. Yet the room no longer feels calm. Marple looks at the sealed letter again. Something about that handwriting feels cold. Miss Marple kept the letter on her lap. She read it again. Then again. Each line carried the weight of something unsaid. Would you visit me for tea tomorrow? Polite. Measured. No endearments, no warmth between the commas. Then that phrase, a small household matter, underlined twice. Not once, twice. Intentional, careful. As if Hester feared the words might be ignored unless marked. Miss Marple reached for her spectacles, held the paper closer to the light. The ink slightly thicker on that line. Pressed harder. Pressure meant hesitation, or control. Sometimes both. She set the letter down, took a slow sip of tea, warm, steady. Her cat purred, uninterested in mysteries of ink and motive. Hester Vane, once full of laughter. A woman who always wore gloves, even when there was no reason. Married well, widowed quietly, retreated completely. No one in St. Mary Mead had seen her at church in 2 years. No one called. No one was invited. Until now. Miss Marple looked at the black wax seal again. Too formal for tea, too heavy for friendship. A seal meant privacy, or secrecy, and secrets have a way of whispering through polite sentences. She took her small notebook from the side table, wrote one line beneath the date. Mrs. Hester Vane, invites. Purpose unclear. She closed the notebook softly. Decision made. She would go, but not for tea, for truth. She rose from her chair, walked to the window, Outside, the afternoon light shifted toward grey. Mist curled over the lane. Somewhere far off, a cartwheel creaked. Ordinary sounds. Yet the village felt different now, as if watching. She poured out the rest of her tea. Her movements quiet, precise, her mind turning faster than her hands. Hester's letter was polite, but people rarely invite for nothing. Something had cracked behind those measured lines. Fear hides best in neat handwriting. She'd seen it before. In notes from parish wives, in confessions written before scandal, in suicide letters, years ago, after war widows lost everything but pride. Neatness was armor. And Hester's letter was armored well. Marple fetched her calendar from the mantel. Tomorrow, 4 o'clock. She wrote the name, Ivy Cottage. Underlined once. A mirror to Hester's double underline. One calm stroke against another. Cherry, her housekeeper, passed by the doorway. Out tomorrow, ma'am? Yes, Cherry. Tea at Ivy Cottage. Thought she didn't entertain no one. Nor did I, Marple said quietly, until today. She looked again at the envelope on the table, the paper thick, the seal perfect. Not a wrinkle, not a smudge. People like that don't call for company. They call for help. The clock chimed 4. Her knitting sat untouched beside her chair. She didn't reach for it. Instead, she watched the letter. Still, white, unmoved. When people write tidily, she said softly, they're hiding something messy. The next afternoon, Miss Marple walked up the narrow lane toward Ivy Cottage. The path was uneven. Grass overgrew the stones. The air smelled faintly of damp leaves, and something older, rose and dust, mixed together. The cottage came into view behind a screen of ivy. Every window, shuttered, no curtains drawn back. Not welcoming, not curious. Closed. She paused at the gate. The hinges creaked when she touched them. Old sound. Neglected sound. She pushed it open and stepped in. The front door opened before she knocked. Hester Vane stood there, thinner than Miss Marple remembered, face pale, drawn tight, hands clasped too firmly together. Jane, thank you for coming. Her smile flickered and fell away. Inside, the air was stale. Roses somewhere faded petals in a bowl, brown around the edges. Polish, too, heavy on the furniture, like someone trying to hide age with shine. Clara, take Miss Marple's coat, Hester said. The maid appeared from the passage. Young, dark hair tied back, eyes watchful, too quiet for her age. She nodded, said nothing, and disappeared again. Marple's eyes moved across the room. Fireplace clean, too clean, no ashes. On the mantel, a photograph in a silver frame, a man's face. Sharp jaw, proud mouth, the late Mr. Vane. The glass cracked diagonally through the center. Marple looked at it. Hester noticed. An accident, she said quickly. It fell last week. I've not had the heart to replace the glass. Her voice trembled slightly. Marple nodded once, sat where she was guided. The chair's cushion was cold, unused. I'm afraid I don't entertain much these days, Hester said, pouring tea with unsteady hands. I've grown rather dull company. Marple watched the teapot spout tremble. Liquid missed the cup by a drop. No tremor in the old days, only now. You wrote about a household matter, Marple said gently. Yes. Hester hesitated. Her fingers traced the rim of her cup. There have been disturbances. Marple waited. I hear things at night. Footsteps in the corridor. Whispers near the study. The sound of the latch softly lifted. Servants? Only Clara. She sleeps in the attic, and she swears she hears them too. Marple's tone stayed even. Have you lost anything? No. Nothing touched. Then something else is being taken, Marple said quietly. Hester frowned. What do you mean? Peace of mind, Marple said. It's often the first thing stolen. Hester tried to smile again. Failed. She looked at the photograph once more. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He's been visiting me, Jane. Marple didn't answer. She looked at the cracked glass, the reflection warped by the break. Then at the maid's shadow at the door, still, silent, listening. Sometimes, Marple said softly, The dead don't return, only the living pretending they have. Evening settled early at Ivy Cottage. Rain had passed, the air heavy still. Miss Marple sat near the hearth. Hester spoke in low tones, eyes darting toward the hall. "It happens after midnight," she said. "Footsteps first, slow, then whispers. Then the tapping begins." Marple's hand stayed folded. "Always near the study." Hester nodded. "The same place. The same hour. I've stopped sleeping there." The clock on the mantel ticked too loud for the room. Marple counted each sound before answering. "Have you looked for drafts? Loose boards? Mice?" "Everything's been checked," Hester said. "Clara swears she hears it too. She won't go upstairs after dark." Marple rose, her movements quiet, deliberate. "Then we'll look again," she said. They walked through the corridor together. Narrow, shadowed. Every step echoed faintly, as if the walls themselves listened. Hester held a small lamp. The flame trembled at each movement. Miss Marple tested the locks one by one. Front door firm, back door latched, windows tight, bolts secure. "Nothing loose," she murmured. She pressed a finger against the skirting board. No give, no hollow sound. At the study door she paused, the key still in the lock, cold, to the touch. She turned it once, gently, no resistance. "Do you ever find the door open?" "Sometimes," Hester said softly. "I know I close it, yet in the morning it stands ajar." Marple stepped inside. The air felt different, cooler, flat, as if the room had been emptied too quickly. Her eyes moved across the floor. Carpet slightly uneven, something small near the corner pale against the darker weave. She knelt. A candle stub, half burnt, wax soft under her fingers, still faintly warm. She held it up. Hester's breath caught. "I never light candles here," she said. "I use the lamp." Marple examined the wick, freshly singed, no soot gathered, used not long ago. "Where do you keep your candles?" "In the pantry, under lock." "Then someone borrowed one," Marple said quietly. Hester stared at her. "Do you mean—" "I mean exactly that." Marple placed the stub on the desk blotter. Next to it, a faint wax trail led toward the study door, the shape of a small shoe pressed near it. Clara's size, perhaps, or smaller. Marple said nothing further. She checked the window again. Locked tight, curtains drawn, no wind could move them. She turned down the lamp, listened. Silence. Then a faint sound from above. A slow creak. Then another. As if weight shifted carefully across old boards, Hester's face drained of color. Marple did not move, her voice calm. "Whispers don't make floorboards bend." She waited another moment, then straightened the lamp. "Someone's been walking," she said softly, while pretending to haunt. Evening again, lamplight low, teacups lined on the tray. Hester poured carefully. Mrs. Altham sat across from her, hands folded over her purse. A respectable woman, tidy voice, eyes that liked to measure others before speaking. Miss Marple sat between them, quiet, watching. They spoke of parish duties, the harvest bazaar, a broken church window, the usual topics that filled silence. Hester smiled too often, her laughter brittle. It snapped between words like dry twigs. Mrs. Altham sipped her tea, then said gently, "It's been some years since your dear husband passed, hasn't it?" The smile on Hester's face froze. "Yes, 3. Silence followed. Not long, but long enough to notice. Marple's eyes shifted toward the mantel. The photograph still there. The silver frame gleamed in the light. A thin crack already across the glass from before. It caught the reflection of the fire like a scar. Clara, the maid, moved behind them with the biscuit plate, her steps soundless, her gaze fixed too long on that photograph. Marple saw it, noted it. The small turn of her head as she passed, almost reverent, almost fearful. Mrs. Altham changed the subject quickly. "The roses in your garden, Hester. I remember when your husband planted them." Hester's hand trembled slightly as she set her cup down. "Yes, he loved them." The tremor in her fingers returned. Clara glanced again toward the mantel. This time her eyes widened. She turned away sharply, almost spilling the tray. Hester rose. "Let me fetch the tin of ginger biscuits. You always liked those, Mrs. Altham." Her voice too bright, too sudden. She left the room. The door closed behind her. The ticking clock sounded louder. Marple sat still. Mrs. Altham adjusted her gloves. Clara remained near the wall, hands clasped tight. A minute passed. Then a sharp, dry sound split the quiet. A crack. Loud. Clean. Both women turned. The sound had come from the mantel. The photograph frame, unchanged a moment ago, now fractured. The line across the glass had deepened, splitting the face beneath. Nobody had touched it. Clara gasped softly, stepped backward. Her hand covered her mouth. Her eyes never left the frame. Marple stood, walked to it. No draught, no heat strong enough to warp the glass. The crack perfect, fresh. She touched the frame lightly, cold, unmoved. Behind her, Mrs. Altham whispered, "Good heavens." Marple said nothing. She studied the photo, the man's expression frozen, the smile now split in two. Then she turned toward Clara. "You've seen that happen before, haven't you?" The girl said nothing, just stared. Hester returned moments later with the biscuit tin, cheerful voice masking unease. "What was that noise?" Marple looked back at the broken glass. "Something fragile," she said softly, finally gave way. Morning light thin and colorless. Miss Marple made her way to the kitchen. The house was quiet, too quiet for servants at work. From the doorway she watched a moment. Clara stood at the table, polishing silver, back straight, head lowered, movements quick but uneven, the kind of speed that comes from nerves, not energy. Marple stepped inside. "Busy morning?" she said gently. Clara jumped slightly, then forced a smile. "Yes, ma'am. Always plenty to keep tidy." The tray before her gleamed. Teapot, 2 spoons, 1 candlestick, its twin missing. Marple looked over the table again, slow, deliberate. Her eyes moved from the silver to the cupboard door, nothing out of place except what wasn't there. "You polish in pairs, don't you?" Clara froze. "Yes, ma'am. Usually." Marple pointed lightly at the gap. "Then where's the other one?" Clara's voice came too quickly. "Being mended, ma'am." The base came loose. Her eyes flicked to the side, not at the cupboard, at the drawer, where a cloth half hid something dull and wax-stained. Marple didn't look directly. She'd already seen enough. "Accidents happen often in this house?" she asked. Clara hesitated. "Sometimes." Her hands trembled around the cloth. The rag slipped. For a moment, her sleeve shifted upward. Skin pale, then a mark. A small burn. Fresh. Marple's tone stayed calm. "That looks painful." Clara pulled the sleeve down fast. "Just a kitchen burn, ma'am. The kettle caught me." Marple nodded, voice mild. "Kettles don't usually burn wrists." Clara's lips pressed together. No answer. The clock in the hallway ticked once, loud. Neither spoke. Marple reached for a spoon on the tray, turned it in her fingers, polished bright. Her reflection shimmered across the curve. So did Clara's, smaller, nervous, watching. "Does Mrs. Vane often come to the kitchen?" "Not much, ma'am." "She trusts you, then?" "Yes, ma'am." "Trust is heavy," Marple said softly. "It leaves a mark when it's dropped." Clara looked up, startled. Marple's face gave nothing away, only that mild, kind expression that never told the full story. "You must miss sleep, polishing this early," Marple said. "I woke hearing noises," Clara muttered. "In the corridor again?" A nod. "Maybe I only dreamed them." Marple watched her carefully. The girl's left hand twitched when she said it, the hand with the burn. "No dream leaves wax on brass," Marple murmured. Clara frowned. "Ma'am?" "Nothing, my dear. Just thinking aloud." Marple placed the spoon back neatly. The tray caught light. So did the faint smear of wax on the cloth beside it. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused. Clara's eyes followed her. Wide. Uneasy. Marple smiled, kind and harmless. "Take care with that burn," she said softly. "Accidents they usually are." Miss Marple stayed that night at Ivy Cottage. Hester had insisted. "Just until I feel myself again," she'd said, her voice hopeful, but her hands had trembled as she set out the spare blanket. Rain began near midnight. Light at first, then steady. It tapped against the shutters like fingers searching for a way in. Marple couldn't sleep. Old houses make sounds, she knew. Wood shifts, pipes breathe. But this silence felt different. It was waiting. She checked her watch. 2:00. Exactly. Then, a sound. Soft, faint creak just beyond the door. She sat up slowly, listened. Another sound. One step, then another. Measured. Not wind, not settling timber. Footsteps. Marple rose carefully, slipped on her shawl. Barefoot. Quiet. Each movement planned. Soundless. She opened her door a crack. The corridor dark. Only a thin slice of light reached from the stairwell. Shadows thick as cloth. She waited. The sound came again. Creak. Pause. Creak. Someone walking slow. Testing boards. Her eyes adjusted. At the far end, near the study, a dim flicker moved. Candlelight. She could see it slide along the wall, unsteady but controlled. Marple stepped out. The air felt colder in the hall. Each board underfoot spoke faintly, but she matched her steps to the rhythm of the house. Old habit. Old precision. The candlelight stopped. The flame hovered behind the study door. Then, silence. Marple stood still, counting. 5 seconds. 10. 15. A whisper followed. Too low to catch words. Just breath shaped into sound. Then a faint scrape metal against wood. The key. Someone trying to turn it without a click. Marple moved closer. The air smelled faintly of polish and wax, the same scent she'd noticed that morning. Her hand touched the door handle. Cold. Still. Locked. She leaned down slightly, eyes on the small gap beneath the door. A thin line of light moved back and forth, candle motion. Then it froze. Stopped completely. Another pause. Then the whisper again, shorter this time. A sigh, and the light dimmed. Flickered once, then gone. Darkness closed over everything. No sound, no breath. Marple waited a full minute. Her heart beat slow but steady. The old clock downstairs struck 2:30. Nothing stirred. She turned the handle, locked from the inside. She tested it once, then withdrew her hand. No need to wake Hester. Not yet. She stepped backward down the corridor, one careful pace at a time. At her door she stopped and looked again toward the study. Empty. Silent. But she knew someone had been there. Marple whispered to herself as she closed her door. Ghosts don't carry candles. She blew out her lamp, lay back on the bed, eyes open, listening. The house stayed still, but somewhere beyond the locked door, something or someone knew she was awake. Morning broke grey and still. No birdsong. Just the slow tick of the mantel clock and the faint hiss of cooling coals. Miss Marple rose early, no one else awake. Hester's room quiet, Clara's door closed tight. The cottage felt heavy, the kind of silence that follows a night pretending nothing happened. She walked softly down the corridor, stopped at the study door. It stood open now, unlocked. Different from the night before, she stepped in. The air smelled faintly of smoke and polish. Curtains half drawn, light weak but enough to see the hearth clearly. The grate still held a trace of last night's fire, but the ash looked disturbed, shifted, as if someone had stirred through it in a hurry. Marple knelt slowly, her knees stiff, her mind sharp. She studied the floor around the hearth. No footprints, just one faint smear of soot near the corner, the edge of a shoe print turned inward. She picked up the poker, tapped lightly through the ashes. Something small glinted faintly, then curled black. Not metal, paper. She drew it closer. A torn edge of an envelope scorched down one side. The wax seal melted into a lump. Still faintly warm, not from last night's fire, from something burned later. She brushed away soot with her handkerchief. A few letters remained, half visible through the scorch. Insurance policy sum £2, 000. She read it once. Then again. Her eyes narrowed. So, she whispered, the dead man still earns. The clock ticked behind her, sharp and steady. Marple turned the scrap over. The back blank. Edges ragged, torn rather than cut. Someone had tried to destroy it in haste. She looked toward the desk. The ink bottle still open. A quill beside it. The lid of the letterbox half raised. No other papers visible. The fire had been used not to warm, but to erase. She studied the soot again. Among the grey flakes, a darker clump wax residue. Black wax. Same as the seal on Hester's invitation. Marple's voice low. Not from the wife's hand, then. Someone else with her stationery. Someone who wanted to borrow her tone. She folded the charred corner into her handkerchief, slipped it into her pocket, then stood and looked around the room one more time. The frame on the mantel still broken. Glass worse now. The crack widened from the night's chill. The photograph's corner burned faintly, a small brown mark near the man's collar, almost like ash had touched it, then been brushed away. Marple ran a finger over the surface. Cold, clean, too clean. She stepped back from the hearth. Every sign pointed to something carefully undone, as if guilt had tried to tidy itself. She turned toward the door, paused. Voices stirred faintly upstairs. Day beginning. Marple whispered to herself. When money wakes the dead, someone living is counting. Sunday morning. The bells rang over St. Mary Mead. Rain gone. Sky pale. Church pews half full. Hester Vane sat near the back, face white as linen, hands clasped, eyes fixed on nothing. Miss Marple sat 2 rows ahead. She had kept watch all morning, calm, quiet, waiting. Then the sound. A gasp. A chair scraped. Hester swayed once, then fell sideways into the aisle. 2 parish women cried out. Marple reached her first. Pulse weak, breath short. Not dead, not yet. Get the vicar, she said, her voice steady. Minutes later, the doctor arrived, smelling of wet wool and worry. She'll live, he said. Shock, perhaps, or exhaustion. Marple nodded, but her eyes weren't on Hester. They were on Clara, standing by the door, expression unreadable, hands too still, the kind of stillness that hides thought. By midday, Inspector Slack arrived, coat damp, hat low, eyes already impatient. Morning, Miss Marple, he said. Another ghost in the village, I hear? Marple's tone mild. Not the first inspector, possibly not a ghost. Slack's mouth twitched. He never liked stories that began quietly. Mrs. Vane fainted, I'm told. Any reason? She's frightened, Marple said. By what? Footsteps, voices, locked doors that open themselves. He snorted. And you believe it? I believe in noise, she said. Not always in ghosts. Slack pulled a notebook from his pocket. Anything missing from the house? Only peace of mind, Marple said again. But something else was burned. He looked up. Burned? Yes. A letter. In the hearth. Slack's pen paused. He waited. Scorched paper, she said. Part of an envelope. Words still visible. Insurance policy. Sum £2, 000. Slack's brows lifted slightly. Ah, now we move from ghosts to motive. He turned the page. The late Mr. Vane, he said slowly, was insured rather handsomely. Company records show a payout nearly £2,000. Marple nodded. Then he was worth more dead than alive. Slack grunted. I'll need to speak with the servants. Only one, Marple replied. Clara. Slack frowned. Where was she when Mrs. Vane fainted? She left the service early, Marple said. Before the collapse. Slack wrote fast. Didn't stay to help her mistress, eh? Strange loyalty. Marple agreed quietly. She's young, but fear doesn't always come from guilt. Slack put away his notebook. I'll have a word with her. Anyway, see if the dead husband's walking for her benefit. He moved toward the door, stopped, looked back. Mrs. Vane said the ghost spoke. Yes, Marple said. She heard whispers. Slack's voice dry. Convenient. Ghosts don't sign policies. Marple's eyes met his. No, she said softly. They don't. He turned, hat low again, rain starting outside, soft and steady. Marple stood alone in the aisle, the church quiet, the bell silent. She whispered to herself words more warning than thought. But widows sometimes forge them. By afternoon, the rain had returned. Inspector Slack walked beside Miss Marple down the lane toward Ivy Cottage. He carried his usual scowl. She carried her small umbrella and her patience. Hester had been taken to bed by the doctor. Rest, they said. Clara opened the door when they arrived, eyes red. Voice low. Mrs. Vane's sleeping, she whispered. Slack grunted. Good. We'll just look around. Marple led the way to the study. The corridor dim. Only the faint smell of polish and stale air. When they reached the door, Slack tried the handle. It didn't move. Bolted from the inside. He frowned. Locked again? Marple's voice soft. Newly. He rattled it once more. Nothing. He looked at her. She nodded toward the chimney. A thin curl of grey drifted out, faint but clear. Not smoke exactly, residue. Polish and warm metal. The smell of brass recently heated. Slack muttered. No fire's been lit. Marple said quietly. Someone's been working. Not warming. He crouched to the keyhole. Empty. Marple leaned closer, her eyes sharp behind the spectacles. Don't touch it, she said. He straightened, puzzled. She bent to look herself. Around the edge of the keyhole, a faint rim, almost invisible unless the light struck right. She pressed her finger near it. Soft, sticky. Wax, she said. Fresh. Slack. Frowned deeper. Sealed? Why in heaven's name would anyone seal a lock? To make sure it looks undisturbed, Marple said. Then reopen it later. Quietly. It's an old trick. He took out his knife, slid the blade into the gap, lifted. The bolt gave with a dry click. The door swung open an inch, then stopped against the rug. Inside, the room looked normal, almost too normal. Everything in place. Curtains drawn, chairs aligned. No sign of force. But the air told another story. That same smell, wax, polish, faint metal, and something sharper. Ink. Slack stepped in first. Marple followed, eyes moving slowly, tracing the pattern of dust and prints. Desk drawers partly open. Not wide. Just enough to suggest someone had looked, not searched. Messy, Slack muttered. Deliberately messy, Marple corrected. She pointed at the top drawer. See the polish line? It's been moved, then wiped back. Someone's careful, but not careful enough. He tugged open another. Blank paper, envelopes, no letters. One corner empty where something rectangular once lay. Slack grunted. Anything missing you can tell? Marple nodded at the ink blotter. Fountain pen, she said. The imprint still wet. Slack checked the surface. A faint line of blue ink had bled into the paper. No pen in sight. He frowned. Why steal a pen? Marple's tone calm. Because it carries a name, or a signature. Slack looked at her. Forgery again? Possibly. He turned toward the door. What next? Marple adjusted her gloves. Next, we find out who sealed what and why. She glanced once more at the keyhole, the faint smear of wax catching the light. Locks don't lie, she said softly. People do. Evening again. Ivy Cottage dark, except for the lamp in the hall. Inspector Slack followed Miss Marple back into the study. He looked tired. She looked thoughtful. Still think it's a ghost? He asked. Not quite, she said. Ghosts rarely carry wax in their pockets. Slack gave a small grunt. He didn't understand her tone, but he trusted it. He'd learned that much. Marple closed the curtains tight, then said quietly, Douse the lights. Slack blinked. All of them? Yes, everyone. He sighed, but obeyed. The room fell into shadow. Only the faint light from the corridor remained. Marple took a single candle from her handbag. She lit it. The small flame hissed before settling. Slack muttered, "We're not calling spirits, I hope." "Just logic," she replied. She held the candle near the center of the room. The flame stood straight for a moment, then leaned slightly toward the far wall. Marple moved it a few inches. The flame bent again, same direction. "Air," she murmured. Slack frowned. "No draft here. Windows are shut." "Yet something breathes behind that wall," she said. She walked slowly, eyes on the flickering light. The flame danced stronger as she neared the panel beside the fireplace. Slack leaned closer. "What are you seeing?" "Watch," she said. She pressed one hand against the wooden paneling. Nothing at first, then a faint give, almost invisible. She shifted the candle higher. The flame wavered, then steadied against the crack. Marple pressed again. A small click answered. The panel moved a fraction, then slid aside. Slack stepped back. "Well, I'll be..." Inside the gap, dust floated like breath. A narrow compartment stretched behind the wall. Just enough space for a box and a few rolled papers. Marple reached in. Her hand came out holding a ledger, its edge covered in soot. Beside it, a burnt stub of paper, folded once. "Careful," she said. "Heat's been near this recently." Slack whistled low. "What's that?" "Evidence," she said simply. They set the items on the desk. Marple opened the ledger. Ink faded, but readable. Pages of neat columns, each signed with the same name, H. Vane. But the handwriting varied. Different angles, different pressure, all pretending to be one. Slack turned a page. Insurance, receipts, amounts, dates. Everyone linked to Mr. Vane's old policy, all forged. He blew out a sharp breath. "So the ghost was just an accountant," he said. Marple smiled faintly. "The living, his replacement." Slack shook his head. "Whoever did this had time, brains, and steady hands." Marple's eyes flicked toward the door. Hands that polish silver, hands that burn easily. Slack straightened. "You think the maid?" "I think someone who understood light," she said, "and how to use darkness for profit." The candle guttered once more, flame thin and nervous. Marple watched it bend toward the open panel again. "Even air," she said softly, "finds a way through lies." The study smelled of ink and dust. Inspector Slack stood over the desk. Miss Marple sat, papers spread before her like pieces of a quiet confession. She adjusted her spectacles. The ledger lay open, each page lined with names, dates, and tidy numbers. Every entry signed H. Vane. Slack crossed his arms. "All in the husband's hand?" Marple shook her head. "No, Inspector. All pretending to be." He leaned closer. "They look right enough to me." "That's the danger," she said. "Forgery isn't about imitation. It's about rhythm." She pointed with a gloved finger. "The slant," she said. "See? Each signature leans left. Sharp, deliberate. But Mrs. Vane is right-handed. Her natural slant turns the other way." Slack squinted. "I wouldn't notice that." "You wouldn't," Marple said gently, "unless you've spent years watching people sign checks at church fundraisers." He gave a grunt that might have been respect. "So, someone forged the husband's name." "Repeatedly," she said, "and with practice." She lifted another page. At the bottom, beneath each false signature, sat a witness name, different every time. She read them aloud. George Pelling, Arthur Greaves, Nora Hay. Slack frowned. "Never heard of them." "Because they don't exist," Marple said. "Or rather, they existed on paper first." Slack scratched his chin. "Someone in the house did this?" Marple nodded once. "It would require privacy, familiarity, and confidence." She looked toward the window, her voice thoughtful. "Mrs. Vane hasn't the nerve. Her fear is real. But the maid," Slack interrupted. "The girl, Clara?" "Yes." Marple's tone sharpened slightly. "She polishes silver with her left hand. That morning in the kitchen, I noticed. She tried to hide the burn on her wrist, the same hand she writes with." Slack straightened. "So, left-handed, like these signatures." "Exactly," Marple said. "She also has access to ink, wax, And the study where no one's watching. He slapped his notebook shut. That's enough for a warrant. Marple didn't move, her expression calm, but her eyes steady. Not yet, she said. Slack turned toward her. Not yet. We've got motive, means, and handwriting. Proof is something else, she replied. Arrest her too soon, and we get denial. But tonight, we get truth. Slack frowned. What are you planning? Marple smiled faintly. An experiment. 1 candle, 2 mirrors, and 1 guilty conscience. He didn't like the sound of it. Dangerous? Only to lies, she said. She gathered the papers carefully, folded them back into the ledger, her movements slow, deliberate. Then she tied the string around it once more. Slack's voice dropped. You think she's acting alone? Marple looked up. Not yet sure, but I know this. A servant who forges is rarely loyal. Slack sighed. Then we'll be ready. Marple nodded. Tonight, she said softly. We'll let the candle tell us who's left-handed in the dark. The rain hit the window again, each drop sharp, predictable, like a pen stroke leaning the wrong way. The plan was simple. Simple things always are until they aren't. Miss Marple waited until the house went quiet. No steps on the landing. No voices from the servants' room. Just the old rhythm of Ivy Cottage breathing in its sleep. The study stood ready. 2 mirrors set at an angle on the desk. A single candle between them. Its small flame flickered, throwing 2 reflections that met in the glass like watching eyes. Inspector Slack had wanted to stay. She refused. Truth comes faster when it thinks it's alone, she'd said. By 11, the house was dark. Marple moved to the guest room next to the study. She left the door open just enough to see the corridor. Her bed remained untouched. She sat in the chair instead, blanket wrapped, eyes half closed, waiting. The clock downstairs chimed midnight. Soft, measured, then silence again. A faint creak followed. Floorboard near the stairs. Then another. Slow, cautious, barefoot steps. Marple didn't move. The corridor light changed slightly, the dull orange of a candle being shielded by a hand. Closer now. Closer still. The study door opened without sound. Just a breath of hinges and a shift of air. A figure slipped inside. Small, nervous. Clara. Her left hand held the candle. Her right, a folded sheet of paper and a pen. She moved straight to the desk as if she had done it before. She placed the candle down, leaned over the ledger, her face reflected in both mirrors. 2 sets of eyes watched her from the glass. She didn't notice, not yet. She uncapped the pen, her left wrist turned outward, the burn mark faint but visible. The nib touched paper. Ink met the name H. Vain once more. Then she saw it. The reflection moved where it shouldn't. 2 candles, not 1. 2 shadows, not hers. She froze. Her eyes lifted toward the mirror, and behind her reflection, Miss Marple's, still, unblinking. Marple's voice came soft. Left hand again, my dear. The pen fell. The sound sharp in the quiet room. Clara turned. Her face drained of color. The candle wavered between them, its flame stretching toward the mirrors. Mrs. Vane trusted you, Marple said. Why write her name beside lies? Clara stepped back. Her heel caught the edge of the rug. The mirror tilted. Light scattered across the wall. Who told you to do it? Marple asked. No answer. Only the small sound of breath breaking into panic. Clara's hand trembled. Then she ran. The candle tipped, wax spilling across the ledger. The mirrors rattled as she fled through the door. The corridor filled with the echo of retreating footsteps. Faster, desperate. Marple remained still a moment longer. The pen rolled slowly off the desk, landing near her feet. She looked toward the doorway, calm, composed, her voice barely above a whisper. And that, Inspector, will be our proof. Morning came pale and cold. The rain had stopped, but the house still looked wet. Ivy hung heavy on the walls, like it had been listening all night. Inspector Slack stood by the kitchen door, arms folded, face unreadable. Clara sat at the table, eyes red, hands clasped tight around a handkerchief. She looked smaller than before, smaller than her lies. Miss Marple poured tea, slowly, calmly. The steam curled upward between them like truth taking shape. "You've had a long night," Marple said. Clara didn't answer. Slack spoke instead. Found her hiding in the pantry. Tried to burn the rest of the papers. Not much left. Marple nodded. "Then we begin." Clara's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Marple didn't speak. She let the silence do its work. Clara's words tumbled out. It was him. The clerk from the insurance office. Henry Boyd. He came to the house after Mr. Vane died. Said he could help with the forms. He knew about the policy. Said it was easy to change a name. Her voice shook. "I wrote what he told me. At first it was just signatures, then papers, then more." Slack's tone cut in. "And the haunting?" Clara swallowed. "He said delay was everything. The company was sending an investigator. If we made her look unstable, they'd stop asking questions." She wiped her eyes with the crumpled handkerchief. "I walked at night, used the candles, tapped the walls. He said fear would keep her quiet." Marple's voice soft. "You sealed the locks too?" Clara nodded. "The wax from the silver polish. He showed me how. It looked untouched in the morning. She thought ghosts were guarding her door." Slack scribbled notes. "Boyd vanished, I suppose." 2 weeks ago," Clara said. "He promised to marry me once the claim cleared. Then he left town. No letters. Nothing." Her shoulders shook once, hard, then still. The sound that came next was small, not crying, just the last breath of denial leaving her. Marple placed her cup down. No pity in her tone, only quiet truth. "You thought Mrs. Vane would die of fright, didn't you?" Clara's eyes lifted. Tears clung but didn't fall. "I didn't mean I thought she'd faint, maybe. But not like that." Marple's voice barely above a whisper. "Fright kills slower than guilt, my dear." Clara broke then, head down on the table, words lost in the sound of her own breath. Slack closed his notebook. He looked at Marple. "She'll face court." Marple nodded once. "Justice comes quietly, Inspector. It doesn't need noise." He stepped outside to radio his men. Marple stayed seated. Her eyes lingered on the teacup Clara had touched. Wax still clung to her fingers. The smallest truth the hardest to wash away. The kettle began to whistle faintly in the corner. Marple whispered to no one. And guilt, once lit, never goes out. 2 days passed. The story spread quietly through St. Mary Mead. Mrs. Vane was recovering. Clara was held at the station, and Inspector Slack was writing faster than his pen could keep up. His office smelled of damp ink and police tobacco. Stacks of papers lined the desk reports, statements, and the half-burned ledger from Ivy Cottage. He rubbed his eyes, muttered under his breath. "Every time she's right, it costs me a headache." The clerk's name, Henry Boyd, sat in the middle of his report. Insurance fraud, conspiracy, attempted forgery. Slack wrote the charges clean, no wasted words. But one thing still bothered him. Boyd was gone. He'd vanished the same morning, Clara confessed. Train from Market Common. No ticket record under his name. No lodging, no receipt. The man had simply dissolved. Slack slammed the folder shut, then opened it again. Anger never helped logic. He knew that because Miss Marple had said it once. "Emotion blurs reason, Inspector, and reason is all we have." He sighed, reached for his coat, found her waiting outside the station, knitting bag in hand, as if she'd known, as if she always did. "Good morning, Inspector." Slack frowned. "Don't tell me you've come to finish my paperwork." "Not quite," she said. "Only to correct one assumption." He raised a brow. "Which one this time?" "That Mr. Boyd disappeared." Slack crossed his arms. "Unless he's turned invisible, he's gone." Marple shook her head. "No, not gone. Reflected." Slack blinked. "Reflected?" She smiled faintly. "You missed the mirror clue again." He groaned. "I thought we were done with mirrors." "Never," she said. "They always tell the truth, only reversed." She opened her notebook. A name scribbled in neat handwriting. Henry Boyd, alias Henry Day. Change one letter, you change a man, she said. There's a shop in Much Barton sells investment bonds, all forged. The sign outside reads, Day and Associates. Slack stared. You think he's there? I think he's reflected there, she replied. He took her money trick and used it again. Fraud doesn't stop, it simply relocates. He stared a moment longer, then nodded. I'll send a team. Send two, she said. He won't run twice. 2 days later, the telegram arrived. Boyd in custody. Arrested selling fake war bonds under false name. Slack dropped the paper onto his desk, shook his head. A slow smile came despite himself. She called it, he muttered. She always does. That afternoon he stopped by Miss Marple's cottage. She was pouring tea as usual. He didn't wait for an invitation. Caught him, he said. She looked pleased but not surprised. Good, she said. Did he confess? Eventually. Slack sank into a chair. Sometimes I think you see through walls. Marple's eyes met his. Calm, steady. Only, she said softly, when they're made of lies. St. Mary Mead again. Calm, predictable. The sort of morning that forgets trouble ever happened. Miss Marple sat by the window, knitting untouched. Steam rose from her cup. The village green shimmered beyond the glass, washed clean by rain. No footsteps, no whispers, just quiet. A knock at the door. Gentle, expected. Come in, she said. Lady Bantry swept in like she always did, half curiosity, half concern. Hat slightly crooked, smile slightly nosy. My dear Jane, she began, you've been the subject of every conversation this week. The ghost at Ivy Cottage. You'll have people believing in spirits again. Marple poured tea. One must let them believe something, she said softly. It keeps them from asking better questions. Lady, Bantry laughed, settling herself on the sofa. I still don't understand how you saw it so quickly. I would have thought poor Hester haunted for certain. Marple stirred her cup once, slow. Hauntings rarely start with the dead, she said. They start with secrets. Lady Bantry leaned forward. Then what will happen to the maid? She'll have time to think, Marple said. Time is kinder than judgment, though not by much. They sipped in silence for a while. The clock ticked evenly. Outside, a postcart rattled down the lane. Ordinary life again. Lady Bantry broke the stillness first. It does make one wonder, she said. If the dead could truly return, would they forgive us? Marple's eyes lifted from her cup. Perhaps, she said. But forgiveness isn't what frightens people, it's discovery. Lady Bantry smiled faintly. You sound as if guilt grows like weeds. Marple returned the smile. Not weeds, my dear Ivy. It climbs quietly and hides what it touches. Lady Bantry nodded, amused. Then perhaps Ivy Cottage was named correctly. Marple's voice softened. Guilt hides where ivy grows thickest. The words lingered in the air between them. Simple. True. Lady Bantry laughed again, though softer now. I do envy you, Jane. You always find such dreadful comfort in reason. Marple smiled, setting down her cup. Reason has fewer regrets than emotion. Another quiet moment. The kettle whistled gently from the hearth. Lady Bantry rose to pour more tea. The room filled again with warmth, small and safe. Marple looked toward the window, sunlight glancing off wet leaves. Her voice calm, almost tender. Truth, my dear, she said. Cools slower than tea. So, could you have guessed before Miss Marple did? A brief pause. The candle, the mirror, or the pen. Which clue gave it away for you? He lets the silence hang just long enough. Then softer. Tell us in the comments. Your guesses, your theories. They always surprise us. The sound of a kettle faintly begins in the background. A quiet build. Comforting. And if you're new here, he continues, subscribe before the water cools. There's always another mystery waiting in St. Mary Mead. A faint clink of porcelain. A calm breath. Tonight's truth has cooled at last. But tomorrow, he lets the sentence rest. Another kettle will boil, a small pause. and another quiet crime will whisper through St. Mary Mead. The kettle hum fades, then silence.